Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and a very good evening to all. My name is Merin, and it's a pleasure to have all of you here. Welcome to the Medjack Global Webinar Series, which is dedicated to uncovering the untapped potential of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, what we lovingly call as ICE, within the realm of healthcare and beyond. By bringing together like-minded individuals, this series aims to illuminate new possibilities and expand horizons in areas previously unexplored. It transforms each chapter of our book, Medjack, into captivating dialogues enriched with insights from accomplished guest innovators, creators, entrepreneurs, researchers, and educators. This dynamic series possesses the power to stimulate the transformation of ideologies and philosophies into tangible, sustainable, and globally impactful innovative ventures. We started this series based on our book, Medjack, which is AKU's first digital book available on Amazon and a platform known as Kobo for here in Pakistan. This book has been co-authored by a total of 14 co-authors, and we have with us the editor of the book, who will also be the moderator for today's session, Dr. Asad Mia, who is a professor, former chair of emergency medicine, director, CCIT. Hi, Dr. Asad, how's it going? CCIT. Hi, Dr. Asad, how's it going?
Hi, good. I'm doing well. I'm post-call. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure to have you here as the moderator for today's session. Now I'd like to introduce the speaker for today's session. We're delighted to introduce Dr. Taj Hassan, a luminary in the field of emergency medicine with over 2 decades of experience as a consultant at the Leeds Teaching Hospital NHS Trust. Dr. Hassan brings a wealth of expertise to our discussion. Notably, he served as the former president of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine from 2016 to 2019, showcasing his commitment to advancing emergency medicine practices. His influence extends globally, having played pivotal roles in leadership training programs for renowned organizations such as the International Federation of Emergency Medicine, IFEM, and the European Society for Emergency Medicine. Dr. Hassan is also the visionary behind the collaborative Chalo program. I've also been told it's C-Halo or Chalo. I'm going to stick to Chalo program, an initiative aimed at expediting emergency care development in South Asia, a region representing 1/5 of the global population. Beyond clinical practice, his dedication to technology-enhanced education and systems development has contributed significantly to the enhancement of safer emergency care. It's a pleasure to have you here, Dr. Hassan. Welcome to our Medjack webinar series.
Assalamu alaikum. It's fantastic to be invited. Thank you.
So without further ado, over to you, Dr. Asad. You can enjoy your coffee. And just a brief, some housekeeping rules for people who are here with us online. We would love for you to interact with the speakers. So if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, please put them in the chat space provided. And I hope you enjoy today's session. Over to you, Dr. Asad.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And just one more thing. If the online audience could just mute their mics, so we don't get to hear what's happening at your end, that'll be great. Thank you, Merin, and thank you so much, Taj, once again. I've known Taj for a few years now, and every time I kind of read more about Taj's background and his what he's done and what he's getting ready to do, it's really inspiring and motivational. And so during this talk today, as people are aware, this is a 3rd year of the Medjack webinars. And so during these sessions, it's not just a didactic, like, a presentation. We actually stay away from any kind of PowerPoint presentations. We try to get into a conversation around innovation with our speaker. And so that's going to happen with Taj today. And we do have some questions and comments for Taj to kind of expand on and illuminate us with. Anybody else in the audience, or anybody over here has a question or a comment, please feel free to interrupt, because we want you all to get your questions out there to Taj. Okay, so just a reminder again. So let's get into this. Taj, the chapter that we picked for you was chapter 2 of Medjack. And chapter 2 is on igniting or ignite. I'm not going to take the whole name of the whole title of that chapter, but ignite. For those of you who are not aware, it's a quick platform which kind of forces you to tell your story in a way in a limited time, right? So you've got 5 minutes, you've got 20 slides. Each slide has exactly, I believe, 15 seconds so that it auto forwards, and so that's a total of 5 minutes. You've got 5 minutes to tell your story. Consider it to be a baby TEDx, perhaps, right? So everybody's heard TEDx talks or watched TEDx talks. It's a baby TEDx. And so the chapter talks about having an Ignite platform where you can share an idea, share a startup idea. It could be a research idea. It can be anything, as long as what we did was that it had to be relevant to biomedicine or healthcare. And interestingly, from the get-go, the Ignite sessions used to have some pitch, some idea, or a number of ideas actually for every Ignite session that we've held at AKU, has related to emergency medicine or disaster medicine, acute care scenarios, or something around that. And so I thought it was like fascinating that as a safe space where people could just share ideas and they don't have to have a whole lot of evidence, they could just go ahead and pitch an idea, and that could generate more interest among the audience, and maybe somebody else would want to partner with that individual, and hence the idea could mature further. So that's the background or the preamble to what an Ignite session is, and what it can potentially do, and how it became really relevant to us at a very early stage for emergency medicine. Very different approach to emergency medicine if you were to consider traditional settings of teaching emergency medicine or research or whatnot. So kind of a longish preamble, Taj. Apologies for that. But based on your reading of the chapter and based on igniting and what it can potentially achieve, if we were to ask you to pitch an idea at an Ignite session, what would it be and why? Could you start off with that?
Well, that's a great first question. I think the reality of I look back on my career and what has always stimulated me has been getting the best out of both myself and getting the best out of the people around me. I think when I was a very junior doctor, I didn't really appreciate that as soon as you become a doctor, you take on leadership roles, and those leadership roles change, and so at the heart of therefore then taking on those leadership roles is to have the tools to be able to excel, not just for yourself and to be able to do the best, but equally the team around you that you're responsible for, and that between you achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And of course, many of us have worked or continue to work in environments which are hugely challenging, where emergency medicine by its nature is one which is renowned for delivering with scarce resource. And so the skill that you most need is actually your ability to lead a team or be involved in a team. So not only should you be a good leader, but be a good follower. So yeah, I hope that resonates with Ignite. Really, I think those are the key components: the ability to lead, the ability to follow, and the ability to deliver positive change. We're very fortunate to do the jobs we do, and we want to drive that forward.
That's great. So my understanding, based on what you're telling us, is that it could be an interesting way to get into leadership or leadership skills, perhaps, and then disseminating those at an Ignite session. Maybe that's how I'm kind of projecting that as well. So let's get into the next question, which is kind of related to leadership and leadership through innovation, let's say. And so you've done various things, right? You've initiated and led leadership programs, training programs at IFM and USAM. So how do you think in leadership, healthcare leadership and innovation are linked? If you think they're linked, and what strategies have you employed to foster innovation within leadership roles?
You just cut out briefly, but I think I got the question. So obviously, as I sort of gave on my previous opening remarks, I think I've been very fortunate over the years to be involved in various leadership programs, partly because it really does. It's a passion of mine, and it's the thing that I find most challenging. And when you want to create positive change, we used to think, oh well, it's fine. We just want to achieve, getting from A to B, and that's fine. That was the objective of what we wanted to achieve this year or this month or today. But actually, getting to A to B is often much more difficult, especially in an emergency care setting. So therefore, you need to have an inquiring mind, be prepared to deal with the potholes of life, and you need to innovate around some of those things. So I think the two are actually inextricably linked. You have to have the basic tools to lead and follow, but then you have to be able, that allows you to excel in terms of being able to innovate. We all know that actually the most successful projects, when you get to having achieved, inverted commas, what you wanted to achieve, they're often quite different. And you hopefully have exceeded your original objectives. So I think the two, leadership and innovation, are inextricably linked. And whether it's the people that you're interacting with or you're managing, the scarce resource that you've got available, and often the time. Time, as we know, is such a hugely valuable commodity in all of our worlds. Whether that's non-clinical and you're having to deliver something, or it's clinical and there are, 40 patients waiting to be seen, there are resources full, sisters told you there's another 3 patients that should be in resource that aren't, and you're having to decide and prioritize. So that's actually an amazing skill that emergency physicians acquire, that the rest of the hospital, I think, is in awe of when they come down and see what we actually do. So, yeah, I think that's why the two are inextricably linked.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And so while I'm thinking about the synergy between a leadership position or leadership and innovation, how they go hand in hand, can you think of can you give us an example of how during your tenure, could have been as former president of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, perhaps, and if for from a tech innovation perspective, if something that you felt had to be rolled out across various EDs, and that's an innovation that's being rolled out, what would you consider to be important aspects where you could ensure that people, be those physicians or be those nurses or a combination thereof, would take up that innovation as well? So because it's one thing to kind of have the technology and innovation, but it's quite a different matter when people actually, the end users, right? So what if they do not accept that innovation? So as a leader, what would you consider to be important things so that the technology gets picked up?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about technology, or we could just talk about, you know, it can be something as simple as, for example, convincing people that, I'll give you two extremes. So something really simple, you know, that we instituted in our departments a few years ago was convincing people that actually it might be quite good to give local anesthetic when doing an arterial blood gas. Now, there are various studies that show that actually, if you do that, there's a bunch of patients that really benefit because they become less needle phobic, you know, the COPD patients, etc. And it's a really humane thing to do. And but actually convincing people that it was worth the extra hassle. First of all, you have to create that right shared vision that actually we all think this is the right thing to do. Then you create champions around that vision, and you buy people in. And then once you've done all of that and got that core team, then you can begin to think about the project and, you know, how you're going to roll it out and how you're going to communicate and how you're going to track it and how you're going to develop your KPIs and how you're going to celebrate the success. And of course, you're not just going to celebrate the success, because of course there are going to be issues and lots of potholes along the way, and there'll be some people who'll deny that process. and fighting your way through that positively so that you don't alienate people, but actually you just bring more people on board, requires skill and tact and communication and team working, and innovation. So that was something really simple. At the other end of the spectrum, you know, I've been, as you know, you pointed out at the opening, involved in some you know, really big project work when I took up the presidency of the Royal College, you know, delivering a new strategic vision for the college as to what we were going to develop and deliver over the next 3 years. And we, at that time, called it, you know, Vision 2020, because you know, it was 2016, and what were we going to roll out? And it needed to be something that you know, had a good grip, had a hook, and was something that you had easy elevator pitch to colleagues or politicians, especially, as you all know, politicians, you know, their attention span is equivalent to an emergency physician's actually. So being able to give them a real focus, and also being able to convince them that some of it will require money, but some of it will require commitment and, you know, endeavor and hard work. And we did that. You know, we focused on staffing, on system design and support. Those were our 3 S's. But our big one was staffing, how to expand the number of emergency physicians in the UK, how to care for them. Well-being was a very big strategy and something I'd been involved in for, you know, 10, 15 years. And then how to expand the staff matrix in terms of other colleagues. So we have advanced nurse practitioners in the UK, we have physicians associates, as well as junior doctors. So that creating that vision, that shared vision, was really important. And once you've got that shared vision, then being able to get people to lead on the various strands, so that they get their time in the limelight. You know, it's not about the president of the Royal College delivering the vision. It's about them delivering the vision. And, you know, people, you know, like myself, being in a, you know, high profile leadership role, you will only really be successful if you're a very good servant to the college. So servant leadership is phenomenally attractive to the people around you, because they can see that you're working you probably have to work 2 to 3 times harder than everybody else in order to be a good servant, because that then empowers people to say, actually, I want to go the extra mile for that guy or that lady, and that's really important. So those are 2 ways in which you can apply innovation and leadership skills to create change. One was for individual patients, local anesthetic for blood gases, but the other was really advocacy at a national level. And as a result of that, I took up the presidency in September 2016, and we managed, through a bit of luck and judgment, to convince our politicians within the first 6 months about how important staffing was. And we then spent 6 months developing and delivering that strategy around staffing. And on October the 11th, 2017, which was 13 months after I started, we launched the largest staffing strategy in college history in the UK. And the reason October the 12th was so important was actually it was the 50th anniversary of the inception of the specialty in the UK. And it was a just really, nice sort of crossing of those timelines. And so, I was overjoyed really, because we managed to deliver that so early in what was my presidency, because presidencies and time runs by very quickly. So those are 2 reflections. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for that. So just to quickly recap, right? So what you've actually, first of all, thank you for demonstrating personalized innovation storytelling, because that's exactly what, it's kind of perhaps not explicit, but implicit in this webinar series, that the speaker or the panelist kind of delves into, reflects a lot. And you've done exactly that, right? So you've given us personal examples. You've given us a kind of a spectrum of from the simpler intervention, patient-based, to a strategic roadmap for the whole college and across the nation. And so I think if I were to recap some of these things about innovation management or innovation strategic development, I would consider innovation ecosystem building, or the culture of innovation. So I think you're also speaking towards having that culture of innovation, so that you've got people on the ground, at the grassroots, which could be the doctors, the nurses, the staff, as well as the patients, because they go hand in hand. So they're the kind of, if I may, end users, and they're equally involved in this process, as are the leaders. Perhaps more involved, I would say, in certain situations. But the interplay of this is what I think, through your examples and reflections, you've demonstrated that really well. Does anybody have any questions or comments over here? If not, we can continue moving. I don't think we have anything online as yet. But so Taj, just very quickly, Marine introduced me. I did not introduce Marine, but Marine is the co-director of CCIT, of the Innovation Incubation Hub. And Zanera sitting over here, she's one of our Global Innovation Fellows. And we've got 2 more individuals over here who are also Innovation Fellows. They represent different areas, different fields. And none of them, actually, except for Marine and myself, the others are not doctors. They're coming from biomedical engineering, finance, fintech, and so on and so forth. So we have a very interdisciplinary team for the innovation work that we are doing, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. So there's a reason why I'm saying this. Interdisciplinary collaborations or interdisciplinary partnerships, where health innovation is concerned, or emergency medicine innovation for that matter. In your experience, and you could actually give us the example of Caltech over here. It's not Caltech, because that's California, but it's Caltech. And you could tell us more about Caltech. And what is the significance, if you believe it is significant, the interdisciplinarity of things, and how likely is innovation going to be effective if we only focus on doctors being innovators? Over to you.
So I missed your the little middle of the question, but so I'm sorry about that. But so I think what you were asking about the work of Caltech and the work of different disciplines in
Yes,
driving innovation. Is that
exactly. Correct. Precise.
So Caltech came about really. I was finishing my time at the college, and I was trying to sort of think of the next big thing for me to do. And one of the things I'd promised my family was that I was going to do something local that didn't involve lots of travel. So, which you know, wives are very powerful people, so that was a key role to do. And anyway, what I actually went back to do was link back to some of my original passions when I started as a consultant in emergency medicine back in sort of 1999, and even before that when I was a registrar in Leicester, and those were sort of education, delivering change, finding innovative ways. And you know, we set up the first website, educational website here in Leeds for our hospital emergency medicine program. That was in 2001, and it started as something called the EMI Bank, Emergency Medicine Information Bank, and then we changed that very quickly into Enlighten Me, which stood for the Electronic Learning Initiative in Emergency Medicine. And Enlighten Me was a, you know, it came together as a really lovely name, you know, and we really enjoyed progressing with colleagues, a range of different colleagues on that. And in fact, it was sort of so successful that by 2004, the college at that stage took it on as the national platform for emergency medicine training as a web-based tool. And we then collaborated with Department of Health and with BMJ Learning and with Doctors.net. And by 2012, it, you know, was in 40 odd countries. Pakistan was also using it, and I was amazed by its success. And they then rebranded it in 2012 to call it RChem Learning. So if you go on the college platform RChem Learning, that started life as Enlighten Me. And when I started Caltech, we reignited, which I suppose is a good word to use, the Enlighten Me name, and so the e-learning platform for Caltech is Enlighten Me, and that sort of started 20 years in 2021, 20 years after it was first developed in 2001. And when I talk to some of my junior doctors and nurses about some of its origins, you know, some of them go, "Oh, yeah, no, that was the year I was born," and you know. So then I feel really old, but there we go. I think I am really old, so there we go. So I think I think all of us have these life journeys, and it's always nice to be able to hook in things from the past, and having learned, you know, because of course we made so many mistakes back in 2001, and it's quite nice to be able to dust some of those things off and go, yeah, well, let's not try and do that again, or let's have a look at a different way to do it. So that's how I think I was, you know, revised sort of that journey into developing Caltech. And Caltech is, you know, it's a medtech collaboration between the trust of the hospital, the university, and industry, and that's what it was intended to do. And you know, we've had to lower our sights on some elements, and other bits have been very much more successful. We wanted to develop digital pathways that allowed better decision support for clinicians. I was involved in the first, in my first AI project. People talk about AI quite a lot, and I was involved in my first project, which was in those days they were called artificial neural networks. Looking at the assessments and support for clinicians in the evaluation of chest pain. And that was in 1996, wow. You know, which is a long time ago. And it was pretty successful. It was very clunky, but it worked. And here we are, you know, 25 years later, and AI is really exciting, but, you know, so all these things, they've been around a long time, but they just raise their profile. So it's a wonderful time to be, you know, helping develop Caltech, and that has required a fair bit of innovative thinking because there's never enough money. And people locally know me for my begging bowl that I go around asking for help. But out of that, you know, we've got some charity money. We developed the Enlighten Me platform. We've, I think, really helped drive forward emergency medicine development in Pakistan, especially. We developed this network called the South Asian Collaborative for Emergency Medicine, SACEM, which I chair at the moment, and is made up of the countries Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal, and the national societies. And we run a couple of virtual conferences. So, you know, in lots of senses, that's generated a fair bit of dynamicism amongst colleagues around that region. You know, South Asia, as you know, you guys know, is home to 1.8 billion people. And there are about 3,500 to 4,000 emergency physicians, which is the same as there are in the UK. It's a huge challenge. So I take my hats off to you. And because I was born in Pakistan, my first and second and third priority is, of course, Pakistan. And it's wonderful to be able to serve Pakistan in this way.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for taking us through that. And so, since you mentioned that you were born in Pakistan, tell us a bit more about where were you born, and like how. Like, I guess you'll have to condense that significantly because you are old, as you pointed out. I'm not saying anything. So, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in a very small village near Chukwal in the Punjab, and you know, my father, very soon after I was born, actually at the time I was born, he just come out of the Navy, and he moved to England to sort of set things up. So I carried on living in the village, Balokasa, and you know, it was a really great time. My grandfather was a farmer. Both my grandfathers were farmers, and so, you know, great supply of mangoes and watermelons and buffalo milk, and you know, you know, it was like paradise actually, but in a small village, and you got to go to school, of course. You didn't have to wear shoes, so that was good. And you had your takhti, which you could write on, and that was also a really great bat to play some cricket. And my first interaction actually with emergency medicine was when I was 4, and my cousin decided, for whatever reason, I think he was obviously upset with me, he threw a brick at me. And I wasn't very bright, obviously, because I then managed to head it. And blood pouring down my face, and that didn't go down well. And I vomited a few times, and my grandmother tucked me up in bed, and they wrapped me up. And I think I supposedly I wasn't well for a couple of days, but vomiting, but I obviously survived. But after that, my mother decided that this obviously had a very bad effect on me, and that my best role was likely to be, just taking care of the goats in the village. So, but then when I was 5, my father decided that I should go to England. So it could have been different. I could have. I'd have been really happy, Bakriyan Chagaiga, and I would have been fine. But there you go.
That's in 3 years. I think that's been one of the best stories that we've heard about childhood. That's things would have been quite different, right? Had she still been a shepherd.
I spent a couple of they said I was vomiting for a couple of days, so as to whether I did have a tiny small subdural or contusion. If he'd thrown the brick a bit harder, who knows what would have happened.
Oh God.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's a fun story. That's a great story. And so let's get where I'm just there's nothing there. Okay, so you have a question, comment, Zanera? I put her on the spot. What about you all? Any question, comment? You can put it in the chat space, and then we can read it off of here. Acha, so let me ask you. So Ignite, chapter 2, Ignite itself, we kind of delved into it as a first initiative of the at that time. We weren't much of an innovation hub, I would say. I mean, we didn't even know what innovation hubs are, and it was just a safe space to share thoughts and ideas, right? And so, like I mentioned earlier, that a lot of those ideas tended to revolve around emergency medicine. So in your experience, or in your opinion, doesn't have to be experience based, but like right now, as having led various initiatives and still a leader, what do you think is the utility of a safe space where people can come and share their thoughts? They don't have to be fully baked, obviously. They could be abstract thoughts, but they're willing to share something because they're not being judged. So, and that, in our experience, we found that to be exceedingly important. What do you think about such spaces? And it doesn't have to be a physical space. Obviously, it could be just a virtual space.
I think it is really important to create those environments. People. It always frustrates me at the lack of opportunity that we give people who come into work in our environments. People are very driven, to deliver service, and quite rightly, that's what we're primarily paid for, and went into the job. But actually creating these environments, giving them examples, showing them the journeys that others have traveled in order to help them be inspired is really important. I think setting questions that setting challenges that people can then begin to dismantle and work out solutions is really very important. So, for example, I've not had a chance to talk to you about this in more detail, but I see the Halo program, the collaborative Halo program in Pakistan, as we've developed a framework for it, and it's very much the start. But in order for it to succeed, it actually absolutely desperately needs people like yourselves, who run, the Ignite program and the innovation platform. It needs you to help us drive it, and I think it would be wonderful to have partnership with yourselves to help produce proper innovation in order to help it succeed.
Got it. Yeah. So, and coming up with potential future partnerships as part of this webinar series is one of our objectives as well, right? So we certainly would love to remain connected, and perhaps as a follow-up to this webinar, the team could get into a discussion on Zoom, and we can throw around some ideas as to what we could do for Sea Halo or Chalo, and but that could be done, in a week or so. Okay. So, do we have a question?
We do have a
Yeah.
question.
Okay. I
It's
don't know
in
how
the
to.
chat space. Sanera, can you open the chat space, please?
Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
Scroll down.
scroll down.
Mm,
Okay,
fine.
that's no.
Mm.
So it says, talking about sharing people's journeys, narrative medicine is a way to teach med students. I guess through narratives and through storytelling. How effective do you think that could be?
Sure. So, storytelling goes back hundreds of years, thousands of years, and we know that the most powerful storytellers really, not only do they capture the attention, but they capture imagination, and they're the people that lead to behavior change. And of course, human beings, in order to get behavior change in human beings, you have to win hearts and minds, and sometimes, often they are, the incredibly inspirational people, the likes of Mandela or Obama or Martin Luther King, but sometimes they're very bad people, the likes of Hitler, but he told stories and gave a vision. And our job in medicine and emergency medicine is firstly to tell stories to hook people in, and then create the framework around it, that you can acquire the knowledge. We sadly, medicine, of course, was so many of our teachers were so traditional. They forced us to learn lists and recite the 4 layers of muscles in the foot, all of which were incredibly important, I'm sure, but I've never in my clinical career used it. And yet we also know there were a few of those teachers, that you sat in their lecture and you were captivated for the entire time, and you went away and actually, it ignited that flame to learn, but they didn't really teach you anything specific. They just created those sparks. And so storytelling is vital, because those are the sparks that change human behavior.
Great. That's a great answer. And I completely agree. I think we should be spending more time rather than having PowerPoint presentations. And I'm guilty of PowerPoint presentations, and transition more towards storytelling approaches. And they could be really powerful. And there's an art and a science to it as well, perhaps, where clinical teaching is concerned. But I think I've kind of personally, I've also seen more and more people doing it, even in the medical space or teaching space, moving away from traditional PowerPoints.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating. If you listen to, a really good speaker, and even some of the really good politicians, they tell a story which captures your attention, and then over here somewhere in that second dimension, they give you some data which connects to your scientific brain. And then over there somewhere in that third dimension, and it becomes a very 3-dimensional talk, will be the policy, will be the pitch, will be the thing that you're hooked into, and you go, yeah, you know, I'll go and do what you want me to. But that three-dimensional thinking in terms of giving a talk is very, very powerful. And if you can learn that storytelling and have the data and science, and then say, this is what I want you to do, or why I think this is how we should treat patient XYZ, that will stick with you.
Really nice. That's really cool. I've taken down some notes over here. Story plus data plus pitch equals 3D storytelling equals impact. So great. Okay, so Taj, tell us about so you worked in a leadership capacity for IFM, USEM, and that's on the European side, and RChem, obviously. And then you've also chaired or led, was it South Asian Collaborative for Emergency, SACM, right? So when you've dealt with these different sets of nations, South Asia or low middle income economies, low middle income countries, LMICs versus HICs or high income countries, and led these emergency medicine collaboratives, what would be some salient or high level, I would say, differences that you've come across? And maybe you could tell us through the innovation lens if you want, or through education, doesn't matter. What kind of differences get highlighted to you?
I think what you know, you've obviously you've worked in the States as well, and what's fascinating is there are so many things, aren't they? Culturally, these nations are quite different. You know, working with USEM and IFEM was fascinating because actually they aren't single nations, they're numbers of nations. So you deal with people from different cultures, different approaches to the power base. The power axis is really quite fascinating. And so some people are very deferential. Some people have always worked in very flat hierarchies. So they will give, you know, challenge to what you think is your position very openly. And so some of those things then take much longer to achieve. They say that the most successful sort of teams are, you know, not necessarily, although I'm a wholehearted believer in, you know, collective leadership, servant leadership, and but others are more convinced around sort of benevolent dictatorship is a good way forward to get things done, because otherwise you can talk a lot and not achieve very much. But I think what I've learned is actually that the people, you know, whether it was IFEM, USEM, RChem, SAChem, or you know, I obviously chair the international committee for the Pakistan Society for Emergency Medicine, and I think what's really interesting is just having that common goal. Having common goals is, you know, so it's so easy to work for Pakistan Society for Emergency Medicine because the common goal is, you know, is to, you know, improve emergency care in Pakistan. And you know, when we ran a leadership summit in Islamabad in 2019, sort of 2 years after we set up the Pakistan Society, and you know, obviously back in 2010, Junaid Razak set up Society of Emergency Physicians of Pakistan, and that sort of dwindled a bit. And I think Junaid helped us a lot when we set up the Pakistan Society in 2016-17. But the leadership summit was fantastic because we actually, out of that, developed this roadmap for emergency care for Pakistan. And so I think that those are some of the lessons that you learn.
That's So like, is there like a unifying theme? So common goals you mentioned, right? So would that kind of cut across all kinds of economies or
Yeah, the unifying theme is again, it comes down to leadership and the person
Hmm.
who's in the hot seat of chairing that. So smaller teams are better, bigger teams are more challenging, because then you end up having to simplify the message, and get people just on that same page of what are what are we doing, why are we doing it, and what's achievable in our timeline. Because there's no point having a goal that is going to take a decade to achieve, when all the people around you on that table are only going to be in that position for 2 or 3 years.
Great
So
point.
then you'll never get anywhere.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you for kind of summarizing all of that into things that are easier for us to kind of like take home as well. So unifying theme, you mentioned leadership a number of times, and that's really important. And then smaller teams are better, and that kind of also aligns with our mindset of Jugaad innovation. And Jugaad is a way of Jugaad innovation is something that's been systematically been studied and published, and we've implemented aspects of it over here as well, and it tends to work really well for us. It's fast track processes. It's keeping it simple. You don't need to wait for money. You don't need to wait for the right team. And smaller teams are much more efficient than bigger teams, especially when you don't have money to pay those extra team members, right? So yes, so completely in sync with that. Thank you for that. There is another question over here. Okay, so your
We
yeah.
also have this other question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this other question first. Since you have mentioned such enthralling experiences for EM and of the experience of AI back in 1996, when and how did you realize EM was your domain? And do you think EM has yet conquered its full potential in terms of delivering service in high income countries?
Wow, what a great question. um, so I have to now admit, it gives an idea of how truly old I am. So I celebrated my 60th birthday 2 months ago, and so I qualified in '86, and I was desperate at that stage to be a GP. I decided it was a great life. I looked around at some friends of friends, and I thought that would be good. And um, and in this country at that time, you could do your own GP training scheme, and I decided to do my own GP training scheme, and I did emergency medicine first as part of a GP training scheme, but then realized that actually emergency medicine was far greater. So that was in 1987. I became that was my first exposure to the emergency department, and at that stage there were only 140 consultants in the country in the UK. Now there are about 2,800. And every few years, people say, oh, it's such an awful specialty. Everybody's burning out. Nobody will come into the work in ED. And I think I've been through like 4 or 5 cycles. So either I'm just a bit slow, and that head injury when I was 4 has sort of affected me. I don't seem to listen to that. I think emergency medicine is the best specialty. There is no doubt about it. I've been phenomenally fortunate to work with really talented people. But I think the big lesson is that the intensity of the environment has increased, and what we need to do above everything else is care for the carers. We need to care for our staff, and we need executive teams to take responsibility and say, if you're going to invest so much money to train somebody to be an emergency physician or to be a really good nurse, then you need to make sure that you protect them. And the people who should protect them is actually the executive teams. in the systems that they put into place. But also then the clinical directors to make sure that you're delivering on those policies, and then the individual to make sure that they are taking care of themselves as well. I don't know if
Excellent.
that answers the question. I might have gone off track. Sorry.
No, I think that was great. Actually, it did address the question, but it also kind of was great because you also um, um, passed on a very important message, right? So that, and I completely agree with you that with rising acuity and more severity of patients coming into the ED, the patient volumes are going up, and it's not going down, and then so taking care of the carers, right? So I think that's a very important point. So completely in sync with that. There is okay. There are one or two more questions. Okay, what other things or options we have to develop interest so we can, okay, I guess what other things or options are there to develop interest for this field in undergrad students, so medical students?
Well, I think that being an undergrad student is such a great time, isn't it? It's you have no responsibility. The world is your oyster. You can dip into anything you like, and I feel incredibly jealous of all medical students, to be honest. So whether it's something as simple as education, e-learning platform, whether it's ultrasound, which is very exciting for people, whether it's sports injury medicine, whether it's a little bit of research, whether it's leadership, whether it's trying to develop an online quiz for wrist injuries, which or whether it's developing a VR platform, it's just brilliant. So, an emergency medicine, you have the substrate there in front of you, because what comes through the door is everything in medicine, and you get to choose, and so yeah. Maybe Allah will let me be a medical student again.
That was great, great points. Thanks for that. I would also want to add, like, in my experience over here at AKU and even past AKU, I've definitely seen an interest in innovation and entrepreneurship in emergency medicine amongst medical students. So some have already, without realizing it, they've been working in startups, and those are emergency medicine-based startups. And
Yeah.
some came across those while they were med students, or decided to get into an EM startup afterwards. Not a lot of numbers in terms of for med students, but in combination of med students and nursing students, I would say yes, seems to be an area that is pretty ripe for innovation and entrepreneurship for sure. Well, startup entrepreneurship, I should say. There's one more question, and it's really interesting. If you could take this one. So this is again based on narratives and storytelling in medicine. Do you think that narrative medicine could increase the emotional creativity of students, motivating them to learn in more impressive ways?
Wow, that's a great question. Wow, that's probably outside my area of expertise, and more in expert educationalists and psychologists, of which I suppose I'm not formally trained. But I think that's right, because actually the only way you tap into the talent of human creativity is to give them that inspiration of describing a blank canvas. And you can only do that through telling stories which, inspire them. In my wider family, I had, my father was a really, fantastic storyteller, and my uncle, his younger brother, was an even more brilliant storyteller, and I was always fascinated by them and their storytelling, and so I think whether you get that from your relatives, or whether you're then fortunate enough to engage those people in our teachers, I think it's just a wonderful, opportunity. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that creates more creativity for them.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. So we're done with our time, and actually it kind of went by fast. And there's so many more things we'd like to pick on, and then perhaps get into more detailed discussions in the future. The team would be really happy to meet with you if you give us a slot for over the next week, 10 days or so, and we can talk specifically about Sea Halo. But before we wrap up, well, you will wrap up for us, Taj. If you'd like to give a message for innovators and entrepreneurs and people who want to get into this through emergency medicine, could be students or could be faculty, any message that you'd like us to take home with us?
Yeah, well, I think, gosh, I think the first thing I would say is never give up. I think if you have a passion, and follow your passions, actually. Number one would be to follow your passion, and second would be never give up. Because I think over the years, when I look back at all the things I've done, I've almost certainly failed at many, many more things than I've succeeded in. But I've been fortunate not to want to give up, and been surrounded by people who are stimulating. And I think in that sense, I think what you and your group are doing is just brilliant, because it creates that fire, which is so important. Pakistan is not endowed with lots and lots of resource, and it requires people to be passionate, to never give up, and to exhibit leadership. So well done.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you for that kind word. Thank you for those kind words, and thank you for that lovely message. Back to Marine.
Thank you for that. Really enjoyed the talk. Lots of good stuff to take home, especially, how you shared about servant leadership and collaborative leadership. Lovely messages there.
And the head injury, actually. Love that story. Now it makes sense. It's all kind of come together really well. That's why you like that.
So worked in your favor. But it was a pleasure having you here with us, and look forward to our follow-up conversation. I hope our audience here enjoyed the session as much as all of us here did. Would love to reconnect. Hope you have a great evening. A very good evening to everyone who's here. Have a great rest of the evening, and would get in touch with you soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks. Bye.